Sorry. My mistress collapsed. Can't make it to the wedding today. That one sentence, delivered via text to my phone, instantly froze the air in the bridal suite. The person who began to tremble, her face draining of all color, was the seasoned wedding planner. But I, the bride, draped in a gown of pure white silk, did not shed a single tear. I simply stared at the cold, impersonal letters glowing on the LCD screen. At that moment, he had no way of knowing. He couldn't possibly have imagined that this selfish, last-minute cancellation, born of his own base desires, would be the trigger that would utterly demolish his brilliant career and his entire life. The time was 11:00 a.m. In 30 minutes, I was supposed to be taking my father's arm and opening the doors to the grand chapel. Over 100 guests had gathered for this day at the Plaza, one of New York City's most prestigious and historic hotels. From down the hall, I could faintly hear the laughter of relatives reuniting after years apart and the hurried footsteps of the staff. Sitting before the mirror, I was the picture of a perfect, happy bride, meticulously crafted by a team of professional makeup artists and stylists. A pearl necklace cast an elegant glow against my skin, and the silk gown, which I had spent months choosing, made me look like the most fortunate woman in the world. The groom, Ethan Blackwood, was a 39-year-old vice president at a top-tier investment firm. He was widely regarded as a rising star, a future C-suite executive, a man envied by all. I, Maya Thompson, am 34. We had met through a mutual friend, and after 3 years of dating, this day had finally arrived. Or rather, it was supposed to have arrived. Miss Thompson. Did you get a call from Mr. Blackwood? Sarah, the wedding planner, asked timidly, breaking the suffocating silence. Her eyes were glued to the smartphone in my hand. Ethan had been missing for some time, and the staff had been searching the hotel for him when my phone lit up. I slowly raised my head and met Sarah's gaze in the mirror. It wasn't a call. It was a text. It just came through. A text? Don't tell me he was in an accident, or there's a family emergency? No. I shook my head, my voice flat. Without a trace of emotion, I read the words on the screen aloud. Sorry. My mistress collapsed. I'm taking care of her, so I can't make it today. Just make up some excuse and cancel the wedding for me. Sarah let out a short, sharp gasp and covered her mouth with both hands. It was understandable. She had likely overseen countless weddings, but a last-minute cancellation like this was unprecedented. And the reason being his mistress's health? It was a joke so cruel it defied belief. What? What on earth are you talking about? A mistress? Mr. Blackwood? But so many of his colleagues from the firm are here today. Sarah was right. Seated at the head tables of the reception hall were the senior vice president and other executives from Ethan's company. He had even invited the CEO and his wife from his most important client account, a partnership he had spent years cultivating. For Ethan, this wedding wasn't just a private celebration. It was a massive demonstration. A strategic move to solidify his social standing and propel his career even further into the stratosphere. In the family section, elderly relatives had flown in from across the country, from California and Texas. My own parents were more excited than anyone to see their only daughter on her wedding day. Normally, this is where the bride would break down. She would scream, "How could you do something so cruel?" She would panic, and the venue would descend into chaos. The planner would scramble to notify everyone of the cancellation, and the guests would leave in a state of bewildered disappointment. Later, Ethan would offer some flimsy excuse, pay a settlement, and it would all be over. He was probably imagining that common, tidy ending right now, perhaps while holding his mistress in his arms, thinking a single tap on his phone screen would dump the entire mess on me and let him escape scotangent-free. Miss Thompson. Maya. I'll get your parents right away. And I'll try calling Ethan again. Sarah, now in full panic mode, reached for her walkie-talkie. Sarah. My voice, low but firm, stopped her in her tracks. There's no need to call my parents. And there's no need to contact him. But without the groom, the wedding. I stood up, the heavy train of my dress whispering against the carpet as I walked over to her. I looked her directly in the eye and said quietly, "The ceremony will proceed as scheduled." What? I could see the last bit of color drain from Sarah's face. Her eyes widened, her expression clearly saying she thought I had lost my mind from the shock. I'm sorry, Miss Thompson, did I mishear you? You said Mr. Blackwood won't be here today, correct? That's right. He's not coming. He's most likely at another woman's bedside right now. Then the ceremony is going to happen, just as I said, I repeated, articulating each word with precision. Open the chapel doors at the scheduled time. The reception will also proceed according to the timeline. Do not let any of the guests know what has happened. Nay. But, that's impossible. How can you have a wedding without the groom? This will become a huge problem later. Everyone will be confused and demand answers. It is going to be a huge problem, I said, and Sarah gasped. He didn't just betray me. He betrayed every single person who gathered here today. His superiors, his clients, his family, the very people who form the foundation of his social credibility. I will not give him an easy way out. I refuse to let him hide and have this all quietly disappear. I'm going to show everyone, right here and now, exactly what he has done. I placed my phone face down on the table. Perhaps she saw the cold fire in my eyes, because Sarah couldn't argue any further. She just stared at me, utterly stunned. Now, Sarah, the ceremony begins in 20 minutes. Please tell the staff to continue with preparations. With that, I returned to the mirror and gently smoothed a stray wisp of hair with my fingertip. Any sadness I might have felt had vanished long ago. In its place was a resolve as cold and sharp as ice. Today was not the day we would vow our eternal love. It was the day I would end the foolish, pathetic life of the man named Ethan Blackwood. As the heavy oak doors slowly swung open, the majestic sound of the pipe organ filled the chapel, enveloping me completely. The light from the crystal chandeliers rained down from the high ceiling, illuminating the vibrant, beautiful stained glass window behind the altar. Over 100 guests turned in unison, ready to burst into warm applause for the entrance of the bride and groom. But the moment they realized it was only me, standing alone in my white wedding dress, the impending applause died like a receding wave, replaced by a ripple of uneasy murmurs that soon grew into an eerie silence. Where's the groom? Why isn't her father with her? Why is she alone? The hushed whispers cut through the organ music and reached my ears. With each step I took down the crimson aisle, the celebratory smiles on the guests' faces melted away into confusion and unconcealed anxiety. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, the officiant announced from the altar, desperately trying to control the situation by reading a note Sarah had hastily given him. The groom, Mr. Blackwood, has something he wishes to share with you all directly, and so his entrance will be slightly unconventional. Even his professional voice trembled, swallowed by the bizarre atmosphere. There was nothing he wanted to share directly. It was a flimsy lie, a desperate attempt to buy time. As I passed the front row, my parents shot up from their seats, their faces etched with alarm. Maya, what's going on? Where is Ethan? My father's low, urgent voice called out. My mother covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes welling with tears. Dad, Mom, I promise I'll explain everything later. For now, please, just sit. I said, never breaking my stride, offering them a faint, reassuring smile as I shook my head. It pained me to see their worried faces, but I could not falter now. Continuing toward the altar, I saw the rows reserved for Ethan's corporate guests. Mr. Harrison, the senior VP who had been beaming on the monitor in the waiting room earlier, now sat with his arms crossed, a deep furrow in his brow. What is this? I've never heard of a wedding without a groom. Is this supposed to be some kind of surprise? It's incredibly unprofessional to keep superiors and clients waiting. What is Blackwood thinking? The CEO of the client company Ethan had spent years courting, along with his wife, made no effort to hide their displeasure, their irritation palpable. I could feel it, as if I could hold it in my hand. The carefully constructed image of Ethan as a brilliant, sincere businessman was shattering, piece by piece, in this very moment. This was the first strike of my offensive, a violent collision between the abnormal situation created by Ethan's selfish desires and the values of the guests who prized social status and convention. I continued my solitary walk, the heavy dress trailing behind me. Most people would have crumbled under the pressure, would have wanted to run away. To walk down the aisle alone, under the intense scrutiny, pity, and condemnation of 100 pairs of eyes, should have been as agonizing as walking on needles. But strangely, my heart was calm. From the day I first learned of Ethan's betrayal, I had cried all my tears in private. I had hired a private investigator, gathered evidence, and meticulously prepared for this day. Right now, he was probably laughing with his mistress, Jessica, in a luxurious hotel suite. I bet the wedding hall is in a total panic right now, he was likely saying, sipping a glass of wine. Why should I fear the judgment of others now? I would not cry. And I would never, ever forgive him. Reaching the altar, I gave a slight nod to the officiant, who was also white as a sheet, his hands trembling as he held his ceremonial book. I slowly turned to face the 100 guests arrayed before me. At the officiant's signal, the organ music stopped abruptly. The chapel was plunged into a heavy, tense silence, where even a single cough would have echoed. Everyone held their breath, their eyes fixed on the lone bride standing at the altar. Miss Thompson, the microphone. Sarah, her face pale, timidly handed me a wireless mic. I took it, gripping it tightly with both hands. Ladies and gentlemen. My clear voice rang out through the speakers, filling the silent chapel. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate our wedding. It was my intention to stand here with my groom, Ethan Blackwood, to pledge our eternal love and express our deepest gratitude to you all. The guests' gazes were locked on my every move. What's about to happen? Their faces seemed to ask. Why is she alone? Where is Ethan? My friends mouthed to each other, their faces filled with worry. I paused for a beat, then cast a sharp glance toward the back of the chapel. At the heavy doors through which I had just entered. However, the groom, Ethan Blackwood, will not be appearing here today. He is, at this moment, in another place, spending his time with another woman. A collective gasp swept through the hall, a physical shockwave of disbelief. Another place? What does that mean? Is he sick? Was there an accident? Mr. Harrison, the senior VP, demanded, leaning forward in his seat. I tightened my grip on the microphone and delivered the cold, hard truth. There was no accident. And he is not sick. He chose not to come here today of his own free will. The moment those words left my lips, the temperature in the chapel seemed to drop several degrees. Everyone held their breath, waiting. Now, I would expose every one of his pathetic lies and reveal every hidden truth. No one would be allowed to escape. Not Ethan. And not his mistress, Jessica. On this perfectly constructed stage, I was about to bring the curtain down on his life. Not coming? What happened to Ethan? Explain yourself. The silence was shattered by the booming voice of Mr. Harrison. As Ethan's superior and a guest of honor, a wedding proceeding without the groom was a direct insult, a stain on his own reputation. The atmosphere in the chapel instantly turned hostile. Maya, please, calm down and tell us what's going on, my father pleaded, rising from his seat, his voice trembling at the sheer strangeness of it all. I gripped the microphone and surveyed the room. I saw a mixture of pity, confusion, and contemptuous glares, as if to say, what a shameless woman. I apologize for the confusion. I began, my hand deliberately trembling as I held up my phone. A short while ago, my fiancé, Ethan Blackwood, sent me this message. I read it aloud. Sorry. My mistress collapsed. I can't make it to the wedding today. I'm taking care of her, so just make up an excuse and cancel. For a second, the hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Then, it erupted. Mistress? Did she say mistress? No way. Not Ethan Blackwood. Did I hear that right? That's impossible. But the first to attack me were Ethan's parents, the two people who were supposed to become my in-laws. Maya, what is this nonsense you're spouting? Ethan's mother, Eleanor, her face contorted in a mask of rage, stormed toward the altar. My son would never do something so sordid. The shock has clearly made you lose your mind. Ethan is probably just delayed by a work emergency. To accuse him of having a mistress. Do you have any idea the damage you're doing to his reputation? She's right, Maya. This is incredibly disrespectful, another of Ethan's relatives chimed in. The accusations flew. Ethan is a future leader. He wouldn't have time for a mistress. You're probably just making this up because you're angry you couldn't hold on to him. Yes. To humiliate him in front of everyone. What a despicable woman. To them, Ethan was the pride of their family. They could not accept the sordid reality that their golden boy had ditched his own wedding to care for his lover. So, they united to paint me as the villain, desperately trying to protect their own prestige by attacking me. Maya, take it back. Tell everyone you were lying. Apologize, right now. Eleanor grabbed the sleeve of my dress and shook it violently. The expensive silk groaned under the strain. The eyes of the room were daggers. Some guests had even started recording me on their phones, the crazy bride. My own parents, assailed by the storm of insults from Ethan's family, looked small and helpless, their shoulders trembling. I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad. Just hold on a little longer, I thought, biting my lip. Maya, say something. Eleanor's shriek echoed through the chapel. Because of you, we are embarrassing Mr. Harrison and the CEO of Global Innovations. Do you understand that, you disgraceful girl? I was alone, a public spectacle in a white dress, trapped in a cage of suspicion and scorn. But my eyes were not dead. Ethan, Eleanor, and all of you sneering relatives. Go ahead and mock me now. In a few minutes, every word you've spoken will become the chain that strangles you. I gently pried Eleanor's hand from my arm and brought the microphone to my lips once more. I have proof. That one sentence silenced the room again. Proof? Don't make me laugh. Eleanor scoffed, her eyes filled with derision, as if she were looking at something foul. Some doctored photo from a shady PI. How much money are you trying to extort from Ethan? It was audacious enough for a woman of your background to think you could marry into the Blackwood family. Whispers of agreement rippled through the crowd. So, that's it. It was about the money. There's no way a man as distinguished as Ethan would cheat. And to ditch his own wedding for that reason? It's unthinkable. She must have had a breakdown. The tide of sympathy quickly shifted to the absent groom. Poor Ethan, he almost married such an unstable woman. Maybe he didn't come today because she was harassing him, and he feared for his safety. Mr. Harrison spat out, his patience gone. Miss Thompson, your actions are severely damaging the reputation of Ethan Blackwood, a rising star at our firm. This goes beyond a simple domestic dispute. Do you understand that you could be sued for slander and tortious interference? You hear that? Eleanor cried triumphantly. Security! Get this woman out of here. What are you waiting for, staff? Remove this intruder. The staff stood frozen, exchanging confused glances. Behind me, Sarah trembled, trying to intervene, but her voice was lost in the cacophony. I was being pilloried on the altar. Words of condemnation flew from all directions. Even friends I had trusted averted their eyes or recorded my humiliation on their phones. Maya, that's enough. Let's go home, my father said, rushing down the aisle, unable to bear it any longer. His hands were shaking with a mixture of anger and grief. I can't stand to see you shamed like this. Whatever Ethan did, there's no reason to stay here. I'll protect you. Let's go. His words were kind, a sharp and painful comfort. Any other woman would have collapsed into her father's arms and fled this hellscape. I might have earned some pity as a tragic heroine. But that wasn't enough. If I ran, Ethan would become the righteous groom who escaped a mentally unstable bride. He would show up to work tomorrow without a care in the world, laughing about me with his mistress over drinks. My parents would be shamed, accused by relatives of raising their daughter wrong. I would not allow that to happen. It's okay, Dad. I'm not going anywhere. I gently but firmly pushed his offered hand away. If I back down now, the truth will be buried. Your pride, and Mom's, will be stolen along with mine. So please, just watch. I'm going to end this with my own two hands. My father, stunned by the cold, quiet determination in my eyes, was speechless. He simply stood there, frozen. I gripped the microphone again with both hands. Mrs. Blackwood, Mr. Harrison, all of you. You called me a liar, you said I was crazy. My voice, colder and sharper than before, cut through the hall. The proof I am about to present is not some questionable photograph. It is the record of large sums of money transferred from Ethan Blackwood's personal account to his mistress, Miss Jessica Vance. It is the log of his graphic exchanges on a dating app he frequently uses. And, I paused, looking up at the large screen at the back of the chapel, it is real-time evidence of where he is and what he is doing. Right at this very moment. For a fleeting second, a flicker of unease crossed Eleanor's face. You see, when he said he was absent to care for his mistress, he was telling a half-truth. I already knew where he was going today. Which is why I made a few special arrangements at this venue. The atmosphere shifted, now charged with a sinister sense of anticipation. Even the guests who had been condemning me began to realize something was wrong. Sarah, are you ready? I signaled to the planner behind me. Sarah, her face set with resolve, nodded firmly and began tapping on a tablet. Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screen. This is the true face of the sincere, elite man you all thought you knew, Mr. Ethan Blackwood. The lights slowly dimmed, and the chapel was plunged into darkness. As the massive screen flickered to life, it revealed a scene no one could have ever imagined. My counterattack was just beginning. In the darkened chapel, the giant screen glowed with a pale, bluish light. Every eye was fixed on it, the silence was so complete you could hear people swallowing. What appeared was not a photograph. It was a raw, itemized list of transactions from a bank account, arranged chronologically. What is this? Just a bunch of numbers. What are you trying to prove? Eleanor's voice cut through the darkness, but the earlier force was gone, replaced by a tremor of unease. These are the records from Ethan's personal accounts, as well as the joint account we shared, I explained, using a remote to highlight a specific entry in red and zoom in. 3 months ago, $50,000 was withdrawn from the account we were saving in for a down payment on our new home. Ethan told me he was lending it to a relative in trouble. However, on that exact same day, $48,000 was transferred from his personal account to a woman named Jessica Vance. This amount perfectly matches the initial move-in costs for the luxury apartment she currently rents on the Upper East Side. A low groan rippled through the guests. The down payment? For his mistress's apartment? That's no different from theft. And there's more. I switched the screen, revealing a relentless parade of evidence: receipts from designer boutiques, charges from jewelry stores, and booking confirmations for 5-star hotels, used multiple times a week. All of it occurred on days he had told me he was working late or entertaining clients, days he was actually spending with Jessica. Maya, how long have you known? My father whispered, stunned. I kept my eyes forward and answered quietly. For 6 months, Dad. From the day I first suspected something was wrong, I've been preparing for this day, all by myself. This was my secret. I was not just a poor, deceived bride. While Ethan was enjoying the sweet life with his mistress, I was methodically, dispassionately tracing his trail of betrayal, documenting and archiving every step. I never confronted him, playing the role of the happy, oblivious fiancé, to ensure he would have no escape. If I had brought it up in the privacy of our apartment, he would have groveled, apologized, and tried to talk his way out of it with more lies. That would not have been enough for me. So you were a willing participant in this charade, Mr.? Harrison's voice echoed from the darkness. It was a cold mix of anger and a certain respect for me. Yes, Mr. Harrison. I was almost certain he would betray me on this very day. The woman, Jessica Vance, is extremely possessive and has a history of testing him. It was easy to predict she would pull some stunt on his wedding day. I walked to the edge of the altar and looked out at the guests. But what I truly want you to understand is not my personal grudge against his infidelity. It is the depth of contempt Ethan Blackwood has for all of you, the people gathered here today, a contempt he masks to feed his own ambition. The screen now showed screenshots of text messages between Ethan and Jessica. Jessica. Do you really have to marry her? Ethan, it's just a contract, babe. To move up at the firm, I need the image of a stable family life. Harrison has been nagging me to settle down. Jessica, so what about me? Ethan. You're the only one I love. I'll get the ceremony over with as fast as I can and come straight to you. I'll even sneak out during the reception to call you. Wait for me. The temperature in the room instantly hit a boiling point. The employees from his firm stared at each other in disbelief. Mr. Harrison, who had called Ethan a rising star, his face was now a dark, apoplectic purple. A contract? That's what he thought of our support? Of the firm's reputation? His fist slammed down on the table. Yes, Mr. Harrison. To him, all of you here today are nothing more than stage props for his own career advancement. That's why he could so arrogantly tell me to just make up an excuse to cover up his own mess. Oh, God, no. Eleanor, who had been berating me just moments ago, collapsed weakly into her seat. The son she was so proud of had just publicly shamed his entire family, single-handedly destroying his own future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I said with a chilling smile. All of this evidence is from the past. But the story isn't over. Wouldn't you like to see what he looks like, and what he's saying, at this very moment? At this very moment? The CEO of Global Innovations asked, leaning forward with intense interest. Yes. I've arranged for a special live feed for this occasion. I pressed the final button on my tablet without hesitation. Ethan Blackwood, you didn't just abandon me, your bride. At this very moment, you are abandoning your entire life. The image on the screen changed. There, in a dimly lit hotel suite, broadcast in brutally clear real-time, was Ethan Blackwood, holding a champagne flute, laughing as he embraced a woman in lingerie. The scene projected onto the giant screen was cruelly, vulgarly real. The presidential suite of a 5-star hotel, with a glittering cityscape outside the window. The two people inside, however, had no eyes for the view, clinking their champagne glasses together. Haha, Ethan, look at this picture. The woman, Jessica Vance, held her phone up to his face. Maya just sent it. The ceremony will proceed as scheduled. Isn't she pathetic? The groom is right here. What does she think she's doing all by herself? Ethan, his shirt unbuttoned, slouched deep into the sofa and snorted. Just let her. She's all pride. She's too embarrassed to tell her relatives it was cancelled, so she's just putting on a brave face. Let her make a fool of herself. She'll come crawling back to me tomorrow, crying. His voice, captured by a high-sensitivity microphone, boomed from the chapel speakers. The faces of his friends, who moments before had been defending him, turned ashen. But are you sure it's okay? Jessica asked, looking up at him. Your senior VP and that client CEO are there, right? Won't you get in trouble? Ethan took a large gulp of champagne, his arrogance swelling. Huh. Those old fools? Don't worry about it. Tomorrow I'll just tell them my mistress suddenly collapsed and was on the brink of death. I'll say I was so distraught I almost passed out myself, but I stayed by her side to nurse her back to health. A little tear in my eye, and they'll eat it right up. Harrison is a sucker for that kind of dramatic loyalty. He's easy. At that moment, a low, guttural growl escaped from Mr. Harrison in the front row. Easy, did he say? His face was no longer purple, it was turning a deathly gray. But Ethan's tirade continued, completely unaware he was being broadcast. And the CEO of Global Innovations is the same. The old man is a simpleton. One round of golf on the company's dime and he's happy. This whole wedding was just a demonstration for them, to show them I'm a dependable family man. Putting a woman with a decent background like Maya next to me raises my stock. She's just a tool, that's all she is. Gasps of anger and disappointment rippled through the room, swelling into a wave of outrage. The CEO and his wife, their faces masks of fury, stood up and started to leave. That's enough, I can't stand to look at that man for another second. Mr. CEO, please wait. I called out through the microphone. You all have a right to witness the truth about this man. It is my only way of atoning for this disaster, to let you see how he tramples on your trust and what fate awaits him. My firm tone made him pause. With a pained expression, he returned to his seat. The guests were no longer attendees waiting for a groom. They were now a grand jury, ready to condemn the con man who had deceived and mocked them all. Maya, stop it. Please, I'm begging you, no more. Eleanor wailed, pounding the floor where she had collapsed. But her tears were not for me. They were for the Blackwood family name, for her pride and joy, being irrevocably shattered. Mrs. Blackwood, this is the true face of the wonderful son you raised, I said coolly. On the screen, Jessica was now draped over Ethan's lap. So, you're really calling off the wedding with Maya? What if she sues you for money? Don't worry. Her father is some retired paper pusher who's obsessed with his public image. He won't want to make a big deal out of it. I'll just say we weren't a good match and shut them up with a little cash. Anyway, Jessica, where should we go tomorrow? We've got the whole week off that was supposed to be for the honeymoon. Let's live it up. Just as they raised their glasses again with a sleazy laugh, I gave my final command to Sarah. Sarah, call the hotel room. Now. With a trembling hand, she dialed the direct line to the suite. The ringing echoed through the chapel speakers. On screen, Ethan picked up the phone, annoyed. Yeah? This is the front desk? I didn't order anything. At that moment, I brought the microphone to my lips and spoke to the man on the screen, my voice quiet, but echoing as if from the depths of hell. Ethan. How's the champagne? In an instant, the Ethan on the screen froze, as if turned to stone. For him, trapped in the private bliss of his hotel suite, my voice must have sounded like the call of the Grim Reaper from an impossible place. His face, magnified on the screen, twitched grotesquely. Maya? How are you? No, this can't be. His eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for a hidden camera, a source of the leak. It's useless to look, Ethan. You told me today to make up an excuse and cancel the wedding. Unfortunately for you, I'm not such an obedient woman. I decided to tell everyone the truth instead. A single microphone in my hand now connected the cold, tense air of the chapel with the heated, decadent atmosphere of his hotel room. The half-naked mistress beside him finally seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation, scrambling to wrap herself in a bedsheet. Ethan, what's going on? Who are you talking to? Shut up, be quiet, he hissed. Maya, where are you? The chapel? You didn't let anyone else hear that, did you? His voice was thin with panic. He still didn't understand the full scope of the disaster, likely assuming I was just secretly recording him. Not just anyone, Ethan. Your company's senior VP, Mr. Harrison. The CEO of Global Innovations and his wife. Your colleagues, your family, over 100 people are here, listening live to your evaluation of them as easy old fools. Before I even finished, the room erupted. Blackwood. You have some nerve. Mr. Harrison roared, striding to the foot of the altar and yelling at the screen. Even without a microphone, his fury seemed to shake the chapel's high ceilings. On screen, Ethan literally fell out of his chair. Mr. Harrison? Why is your voice? Look closely, Ethan. That large, beautiful flower arrangement in front of you? I had it delivered this morning as a surprise for the groom. It contains a high-definition webcam and a broadcast-quality microphone. And this feed isn't just on the screen here. It's also being streamed on a private YouTube Live link. I paused, then delivered the final blow. Your phone must be blowing up right now. Those are messages of disgust and contempt from your colleagues and friends who just watched your little performance. With a shaking hand, Ethan grabbed his phone from the table. The screen was a non-stop cascade of notifications. Ethan, are you insane? Harrison is furious. Consider your career at the firm over. You are the lowest form of scum. Never contact me again. The color drained completely from Ethan's face. The arrogant, all-powerful man from moments ago was gone. No, it's a lie, this can't be happening. Oh, it's very real, Ethan. You called me a tool. You mocked your mentors as easy. For your own selfish desires, you trampled on the goodwill of so many people. Now, you will begin to pay the price. This was the turning point. Until now, I was the betrayed victim, and he was the perpetrator with the upper hand. But in that instant, our roles were completely and irrevocably reversed. I was no longer a weak woman who would weep and accept her fate. I was the executioner, here to demolish the castle of lies he had built from the ground up. Maya, wait, I'm sorry. It was a joke, all of it was just a joke. Ethan began to babble, pleading at the camera. Mr. Harrison, Mr. CEO, it's not what it looks like. She's trying to frame me. A joke? Mr. Harrison's icy voice cut him off. The words you spoke while embracing your mistress and drinking champagne were a joke? I am beyond disappointed in you, Blackwood. The word is inadequate. Your betrayal of this firm and our clients is unforgivable. There's no need to bring in your resignation tomorrow. I have just instructed HR to begin your termination, effective immediately. No. Mr. Harrison, please. I was just. For the good of the company. Silence. Is shacking up with a mistress in a hotel suite for the good of the company? Our contract with Global Innovations is now dead because of you. You will be held personally liable for all damages incurred. Cries of, that's right, and, he deserves it, rose from the crowd. There was not a single person left in the room to defend him. Even his own parents were weeping, unable to look at their son. And we're not finished yet, Ethan, I said, a frozen smile on my face. Did you really think your job and reputation were the only things you were going to lose? His eyes widened in terror. What? What do you mean, Maya? That message you sent me. The lie about your mistress collapsing so you could go nurse her back to health. Do you have any idea of the legal implications? I held up a document I had brought from the bridal suite, a lawyer's seal clearly visible. Today, you abandoned this wedding without a valid reason, for the express purpose of carrying on an affair. This is a clear breach of contract and a flagrant violation of public decency. I am suing you, and Miss Jessica Vance there, for the maximum allowable damages for emotional distress and financial losses. On screen, Jessica jumped as her name was called. What? Me? I have nothing to do with this. Ethan was the one who invited me. You have everything to do with it, Jessica. You knew he had a fiancée. You conspired with him to meet on his wedding day, committed adultery, and then laughed at my expense. It's all been recorded. I don't know anything about this. This isn't what I signed up for. Jessica shoved Ethan away and scrambled for her clothes, trying to flee to the bathroom. But that escape route, too, was just another part of the trap I had laid. This was the real reversal. This was not about winning an argument. It was a calculated strike designed to turn off the spotlights on the stage of his life, turn his entire audience against him, and plunge him into a solitary, inescapable hell. So, Ethan, I asked. Are you ready to taste true despair? Ethan couldn't answer. He just trembled, a pathetic figure on the other side of the screen, as the fury in the chapel intensified. And the situation spiraled toward an even more shocking truth. The couple who burst through the chapel doors were an older man in a simple work jacket and a woman who looked like she'd come straight from her kitchen, still wearing an apron. Amidst the sea of designer dresses and tuxedos, their humble appearance was jarring. All eyes turned to them. Wait, aren't they? A young employee from Ethan's firm whispered. Aren't they Kevin Miller's parents? He used to work under Ethan. At that name, Ethan's parents and Mr. Harrison narrowed their eyes. Kevin Miller. He was the promising young analyst who had supposedly resigned a year ago for personal mental health reasons, during a major project. Where is Ethan Blackwood? The man in the work jacket, Mr. Miller, cried out, his voice shaking. In his hand, he clutched a worn notebook. Give us back our son. He was such a hard-working boy, but Mr. Blackwood drove him into a corner. He's still in a dark room, trembling, to this day. A fresh wave of shock washed over the chapel. Drove him into a corner? I thought Miller resigned on his own, Mr. Harrison said, his expression grim. No, Mrs. Miller cried, tears streaming down her face. Your Mr. Blackwood didn't just steal our son's work. He blamed Kevin for every single failure and verbally abused him late into the night, every night. He told our son, the company would be better off if an incompetent loser, like you just died. It's all written in our son's journal. From the altar, I watched them calmly. I was the one who had invited them here today. While investigating Ethan's past, I had stumbled upon Kevin's story. While tracing the source of the money Ethan was lavishing on his mistress, I had discovered evidence that he had been repeatedly filing fraudulent expense reports under Kevin Miller's name. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, thank you for coming, I said, my voice carrying over the microphone to every corner of the room. Everyone, this is another face of Ethan Blackwood. It's not just about his betrayal of me, or his disloyalty to his company. To advance his own career, he has also crushed the spirit of a promising young man and thrown him away like trash. On the screen, Ethan could no longer even speak. He just gaped like a fish out of water, staring in despair at the Millers. Lies, where's the proof? Ethan's weak rebuttal was met with a new display on the screen. There, for all to see, were copies of the abusive, harassing emails Ethan had sent to Kevin, alongside the forged expense reports he had created using a scan of Kevin's signature. When Kevin was forced to quit, Ethan threatened him, saying, if you ever speak of this, I'll make sure you can never work in this industry again. That's why his parents had to suffer in silence until today. But Ethan, when you decided to use this sacred ceremony as a stage for your own vanity, you broke the seal on all of your secrets. The mood in the chapel had shifted beyond anger into something bordering on terror. The man on the screen wasn't just a cheater. He was a monster who devoured the lives of others to fuel his own success. Blackwood, you were this rotten to the core? Mr. Harrison's voice was no longer angry, but filled with a profound, deep disappointment and contempt. The company will launch a full investigation into the matter of Kevin Miller. We will not hesitate to press criminal charges. Be prepared. No, Mr. Harrison, that's not true. Miller did it on his own. Enough. The proof has been laid bare for all of us by Miss Thompson. I will not believe another single, filthy word that comes out of your mouth. Ethan collapsed. On the luxurious hotel bed, he was ashen, shaking uncontrollably. Behind him, Jessica, her bags packed, was walking out of the room without a backward glance. Jessica, wait. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me alone. Ethan cried, reaching for her. But she looked down at him as if he were garbage, and violently shook his hand off. Don't touch me, you criminal. You're disgusting. The bags, the jewelry, everything you gave me, I'm turning it all over to the police. I'm a victim here. The door slammed shut with a resounding bang. All that was left in the opulent suite was one pathetic man, half-dressed and groveling on the floor. Do you see it clearly now, Ethan? I asked, delivering the final, icy blow. Do you see how fragile and filthy your castle of sand really was? The status, the reputation, the lover you tried so hard to protect, it was all built on a foundation of lies. In the chapel, Mr. and Mrs. Miller clung to each other, weeping. Ethan's own parents couldn't even stand, curled up in their seats under the scornful gazes of their relatives. The truth was out. But my revenge was not over. All he had lost so far were external things. Now, I was going to carve a hell into his very soul that would never fade. I gave a nod to Sarah. Deliver my final gift to him. The entire room held its breath. What further despair could possibly exist? Just as they all thought this, a new movement on the screen began. Left all alone, Ethan sat on the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. His lover had abandoned him, he'd been fired from his job, and his family was disowning him. For most, the story would end here. But Ethan's torment was about to enter a new, deeper phase. With trembling fingers, he picked up his phone. The screen was still flooded with notifications, but they were of a different nature now. Ethan, there are reporters outside your apartment building. Your parents' address has been doxed online. There's a rumor you have a secret child. Is it true? What is this? What's happening? Ethan's face twisted further in terror. In his state of total breakdown, he hadn't realized that his situation had escalated far beyond a failed wedding into an uncontrollable, public execution. You seem confused, Ethan, I said, watching him from the altar. What you are seeing now is the consequence of all your lies. To protect your own status, you've manipulated information and sacrificed the privacy of others. Now, it seems those same tactics are being turned against you. Maya. What did you do? Did you leak this to the press? No. I simply passed along information about your past misdeeds and the women you silenced to the appropriate channels. It's a frightening thing, modern society. Once a fire is lit, it spreads on its own, fueled by your own actions. Ethan clawed at his head. Lies? What did I even do? Everyone has affairs. Do they? Would you like to repeat that to everyone gathered here today? I asked. In the room were the executives he had called easy, the clients he had mocked, and the many people who had believed in him. They all sat in stony silence, their cold eyes fixed on the man on the screen. Just then, the hotel room's doorbell began to ring, loud and insistent. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Ethan jumped back with a yelp. Who is it? Jessica? Did she come back? Clutching at this last straw of hope, he scrambled to the door and opened it just a crack, the security chain still on. But it wasn't his mistress. Mr. Ethan Blackwood? I am the manager of this hotel. The voice that came through the door was polite, but as cold as ice. I'm afraid I must ask you to vacate the premises immediately. What are you talking about? We booked this room for the night. I have the right to be here until morning. That may have been the case, sir, however, the individual who made the reservation, Miss Maya Thompson, has just formally cancelled it. Furthermore, the credit card on file for payment has been frozen by the cardholder. A small, of understanding rippled through the chapel. That's right. The suite, the champagne, even the expensive shirt on his back, I had arranged for every payment to ultimately be traced back to me. That's insane. Then who's paying for the champagne? For the room? The person who made the reservation has also informed us of a potential trespasser on the property and requested that we contact the police to have them removed. Our security team is on its way up now. If you do not leave peacefully. Before the manager could finish, 2 burly security guards appeared behind him in the hallway. Wait, hold on. I'm not even dressed. My things. Your belongings will be brought down to the lobby for you later. Now, please come with us. On screen, Ethan was unceremoniously grabbed by the guards and dragged out into the hallway. The once elite vice president, now clad only in his underwear and a half-buttoned shirt, was paraded down the hallowed halls of one of New York's finest hotels, his humiliation broadcast from the security cameras to the screen in the chapel. Stop. Let go of me. I'm Ethan Blackwood. A VP at Sterling and Pierce. Do you know who you're dealing with? Mr. Blackwood, please do not make this more unpleasant than it needs to be. The manager's cool voice shattered his last shred of pride. As he was dragged toward the elevators, other hotel guests peeked out of their rooms, some raising their phones to record the spectacle. Ethan finally seemed to understand that he had become the most pathetic creature on earth. His eyes were vacant, and meaningless groans escaped his lips. Now, everyone, I said, turning back to the guests and bowing deeply. I sincerely apologize for forcing you to witness such an unpleasant scene. This is the fate of the groom who betrayed you all today to prioritize his own desires. The chapel was silent, the previous outrage replaced by a heavy, grim sense of resolution. But this is not enough, I continued. He has lost his job, his money, and his women. But the loss he truly needs to understand is far more fundamental. I raised my head and looked toward a figure standing at the chapel entrance. He was holding a black envelope. Ethan, can you hear me? A final letter has arrived for you. This is the greatest reversal I have prepared. This is the final checkmate that will end your life forever. In the elevator, pinned by security guards, Ethan stared at his phone screen, his face contorting in a new mask of terror. A letter? What are you going to do, Maya? I'm going to read it now. I slowly accepted the black envelope. Inside was the one great truth he had always hidden, a truth that even I had only recently learned. Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting. The story was about to reach its true, devastating core. Every eye in the room was fixed on the black envelope in my hand. On the screen, Ethan's pathetic form, pinned by security in a hotel elevator, was still visible. Against this backdrop, I slowly drew a single, heavy sheet of paper from the envelope. Ethan, a little while ago, you called me a tool. You said you only wanted a woman with a respectable background to stand beside you for your career. I took a deep breath. But you have made a grave miscalculation. The reason you have lived such a charmed life as a young elite was never because of your talent. It was not because of your clever networking. It was all thanks to the unseen support of my father, the man you dismissed as a stuffy, retired paper pusher. At these words, Mr. Harrison and the CEO of Global Innovations snapped their heads toward my father, Robert Thompson, who sat quietly in the front row. He was still in his unassuming suit, a model of quiet dignity. "What are you talking about, Maya? Your father? That can't be. You told me yourself he was just some low-level government worker." Ethan croaked from the screen, a strained, disbelieving laugh on his lips. "Yes, my father worked for the government. But he was not just any civil servant. He was a legendary political strategist, a fixer, who once held the levers of power in Washington, D.C. A man the titans of industry and politics referred to as the Kingmaker. Mr. Harrison, Mr. CEO, I continued, surely you haven't forgotten. 15 years ago, when your companies were on the verge of bankruptcy during the financial crisis, who was the man who quietly brokered the backroom deals with the banks and saved you both?" In an instant, the color drained from Mr. Harrison's face. He shot to his feet. "Mr. Thompson. You can't be. You're the Robert Thompson?" The CEO of Global Innovations fumbled with his glasses, staring at my father with wide, incredulous eyes. "My God. I knew he looked familiar. To think you were Mr. Thompson's daughter." A new wave of awe and shock, completely different from before, swept the room. The executives from Ethan's firm rose in unison, nodding deeply with profound respect toward my father. "This, Ethan, is the true nature of what you have thrown away," I announced. "The reason your superiors, the men you called easy, fast-tracked you to vice president, was because they saw my father's shadow behind you. They were repaying a debt to him by covering up your mistakes and inflating your accomplishments." On the screen, Ethan's mind seemed to have shut down completely. "No, lies, it was my skill. I worked day and night. No. On the nights you were entertaining clients with your mistress, my father was pulling strings behind the scenes. A contract you were about to lose due to your incompetence was saved by a single phone call from my father. But you, in your arrogance, believed it was your own genius. You even laughed at my father, calling him a boring old man." I walked to the edge of the altar. "And this is the final blow. This black envelope contains an official statement from my father. As of today, he has withdrawn all of his support and recommendations for both Sterling and Pierce and Global Innovations. Furthermore, taking your infidelity and embezzlement with the utmost seriousness, he has requested the full cooperation of his former protégés in the district attorney's office to pursue a thorough legal investigation." "The D.A.? Yes. The credit you stole from Kevin Miller, and the nearly $300,000 you embezzled from your company, it will all become part of a federal case. You will no longer just be fired. Your next residence will not be a luxury apartment, but a cold, metal cell." Ethan didn't even scream. His mouth hung open as he collapsed, a dead weight in the arms of the security guards. "And one more thing," I said, switching the screen one last time. "About your mistress, Jessica Vance. 6 months ago, she was on the verge of bankruptcy, about to flee the country to escape massive debts. She was saved by a certain individual. That individual was my private investigator. From the very beginning, she was my accomplice, working under my instructions to accelerate your downfall. Yes. Her calling you to the hotel today was also my idea. I wanted to drag you down to the deepest pit of hell at the very moment you felt most triumphant. After withdrawing all the money you gave her, she has already fled the country. The money you thought was for her apartment was, in fact, her escape fund. This was my ultimate checkmate." Ethan thought he was manipulating his mistress, but he was merely a puppet dancing for a spy I had sent. "Your career, your money, your love, everything you worked so hard for was just an illusion I allowed you to have, all of it played out on the palm of my hand." The silence in the chapel was now as heavy and oppressive as a vacuum. Everyone was speechless at the sheer, cold brilliance of my revenge. His former colleagues, superiors, and relatives no longer even saw Ethan as a human being. "Maya, please. Forgive me." Ethan's faint voice came through the phone. "Forgive you? With what mouth do you ask for forgiveness? You were the one who destroyed this wedding, not me." I set the microphone down and walked slowly to my father. He said nothing, but gently took my hand. Its warmth was the only thing that seemed to thaw my frozen heart. But the story was not over. For the man who had fallen to the lowest depths, an even more final, social death was about to be delivered. The last thing he would ever see would be the coldest sight in the world. In front of the grand entrance of the plaza, a man was unceremoniously thrown onto the cold sidewalk. Half naked, his shirt torn, the once dashing rising star of Sterling and Pierce was gone. "Let go of me. I'm a guest. I'll call the police." Ethan's shriek was hoarse, echoing uselessly into the city air. The security guard stood impassively, blocking his way back inside. Behind them, wealthy hotel guests stared from their limousines, some smirking, others raising their phones. "It's a good look for you, Ethan. The Emperor's new clothes." My voice, cold and final, emanated from the speakers of his own phone, which lay on the asphalt beside him. He scrambled for it, seeing my face, still in my wedding dress, on the continuing YouTube livestream. Maya, please, stop it. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back, I'll get on my knees, just make it stop." "No, Ethan. You still don't understand the true scale of what you've lost." I pointed to a secondary screen next to the altar. On it, the hashtag number worst groom in America was trending explosively, his name, face, and professional history spreading across the globe like a virus. "In the span of a few hours, you haven't just lost a wife. The entire brand of Ethan Blackwood, which you poured your life into building, has been completely and utterly annihilated. No company in this country will hire you. No friend will answer your call." A cold sigh went through the chapel. Mr. Harrison grabbed a microphone. "Blackwood, the $300,000 you embezzled, every last cent will be recovered. We have already notified the NYPD. A patrol car should be arriving for you any second now." As if on cue, the flashing red and blue lights of a police car reflected on the screen, its siren growing louder. "No, the police. I was just borrowing. Borrowing it to pay for your mistress's lifestyle? You can tell your excuses to the judge." Ethan scrambled backward, terrified by the approaching siren, but there was nowhere to run. "Ethan, you once said that a betrayal you get away with is a victory," I said. "But you were wrong. The more you hide a betrayal, the more it rots the ground beneath your own feet. You have fallen into the pit you dug for yourself." I turned and gave my parents a long, tight hug. My father nodded silently. My mother, wiping away a tear, looked at me with pride. "Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry for making you believe in a man like this for 3 years. But I'm okay now. From this moment on, I'm starting a new life." "Maya, wait. Don't go, I still love you." Ethan screamed from the screen. "You never loved me. You loved the convenient facade I provided and the power of my father. Goodbye, Ethan. The tomorrow without you is my real wedding day." I signaled to the staff, and the livestream was cut. The screen went black, and the solemn silence of the chapel returned. It's over," Sarah, the planner, whispered, slumping into a chair in relief. The guests were silent for a moment, processing what they had just witnessed. Then, a small smattering of applause began, growing until it filled the entire chapel. It wasn't for a bride and groom. It was a heartfelt ovation for a woman who had reclaimed her dignity and triumphed over a great evil. "Maya, that was magnificent," Mr. Harrison said, taking my hand. "We are ashamed to have almost entrusted a brilliant woman like you to a man like that. We will, of course, ensure you are fully compensated, and we offer our sincerest apologies to you and your parents." "Thank you, Mr. Harrison. But please, don't worry. I only ever wanted to settle this with my own 2 hands." I lifted the hem of my white dress and gave a graceful nod to the guests. There was no trace of a tragic, betrayed bride. There was only the image of a strong woman, rising from the ashes of her own making. My story was now at its climax. The man who had been at the peak of his life just hours ago had audibly crumbled, disappearing into the depths of hell. I didn't need to watch his final moments. His life was already over the second I closed the door. Epilogue. The sirens at the hotel entrance were a far crueler sound than the roar of the luxury cars Ethan used to love. He was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. His pathetic pleas were ignored. The last person he saw before being put in the police car was his mistress, Jessica, coolly giving a statement to an officer as a cooperating witness before hailing a cab and disappearing forever. He finally, truly understood that he had been a pawn from the very beginning. Inside the chapel, my father, Robert Thompson, rose and addressed Ethan's mother. "Eleanor, your son's crimes are immense. I will not blame you for them, but know this. My daughter, Maya, tried with all her heart to become a member of your family. You judged her heart with the ruler of status and background and trampled upon it. That is a debt that will follow you for the rest of your life." She could only tremble on the floor, utterly broken. "Come, Maya. We're done here," my father said, extending his hand. I took it, and the heavy wedding dress suddenly felt as light as a feather. As I walked out, the guests parted, their applause a respectful tribute. At the entrance, I paused one last time. I thought of Ethan's parents, still huddled in shame, and of the woman I used to be. There were no tears. Only a cold, clean, overwhelming sense of liberation. You can hide a betrayal, but the priorities you choose will define your life. I thought. You threw away the most precious thing of all, Ethan, and you never even knew you had it. I walked out into the bright afternoon sun without looking back. Months later, I had started over. I had a new apartment near my parents, and a new job at a small consulting firm, helping companies improve their work environments and support their employees' mental health. A job I found through the now recovering Kevin Miller, who was slowly rebuilding his own life. Ethan was sentenced to prison after a swift trial. His family was bankrupted by the lawsuits. I received one letter from him, filled with self-pitying excuses and pathetic pleas. I tore it up without finishing it. His inability to understand his own faults was his true life sentence. On a sunny afternoon, I walked alone in a park overlooking the Hudson River. The breeze was gentle, and children's laughter filled the air. I looked at my left hand. There wasn't even a faint mark where the ring used to be. Happiness isn't something someone else gives you, I whispered to myself. It's something you choose, something you protect, something you walk toward on your own 2 feet. I looked up at the vast, clear blue sky. My heart was filled with a quiet peace and a gentle hope for the future. The past could not be erased, but because of it, I had found a strength I never knew I possessed. I had learned to live without lying to myself. My story doesn't end here. It is just beginning, and from now on, every single page will be written in my own words.